Capitec Bank has finally gotten the green light to purchase and acquire Mercantile Business Bank at 3.56 billion rand. This will see Capitec swiftly make a banking offering for small to medium-sized enterprises and entrepreneurs. The two will operate concurrently, however separately for retail banking at Capitec and business banking at Mercantile, and both will aim at offering affordable banking services to retail and business clients.
So joining us to talk more about what this acquisition and future amalgamation means for the business sector and the business banking competitive space is certified business advisor and commentator Derrick Ndzavi. Thank you very much for joining us, Derrick. Good morning.
Thank you, Caesar, and thank you, Gooks.
So simply put, if somebody to say this is amazing news for entrepreneurs in South Africa, would you agree with that or disagree?
I would disagree. Because for me, I see it as a platform to collect data for the banks more than opening opportunities. Because whatever that they are doing already, FNB has counter-offered and say we're going to give free SMMEs accounts. So for me, it's more about the commitment should go beyond that. We need to understand what would be the loan options for small businesses.
But because that's the thing right there.
Yeah,
so, because when people take over a business, it's never about opening accounts.
Yeah.
You can open 1 million accounts today and close them tomorrow.
Yes. So the thing is that in as much as you can bring us together and say we want small business to join us, the question is how will that create sustainable opportunities for small businesses and for the jobs? So that is what we have to look at. Not necessarily to look at, oh, here's the good news, great. You know, it's like saying Cape Flats have got free Wi-Fi's and all that. But should we celebrate on that? No, we need to look at what is the intention behind that.
But let's look at the track record, right? So if you look at Capitec Bank and the kind of bank offering they've been able to offer their consumers thus far, very, very, very low banking rates. Very good tech, actually, and apps.
Ease of banking.
Yes.
Great accessibility of the services.
Yes. And then you look at Mercantile and what they've been able to offer small and young entrepreneurs as well. A lot of people that bought, for example, buildings downtown, they bought them through Mercantile.
That's
so the
true.
track record of those two banks together speak for themselves. But then when they amalgamate, surely then the guys, I see no reason why they don't want to do business any differently.
Well, the thing is, we need to look at it this way, that it's a competition. It's a space. It's a question of who can move swift first. So for them to do the amalgamation, it was a good thing. But as to will that benefit the small business, that's another question that we have to look at. Because we need to understand that most of the banks that offer the loans to small businesses, those loans are guaranteed by the government. You know? So the question would be, will the government be willing to come on board when the government is still working on having its own bank, which is a post office, and which we are still sitting now? We don't know whether it's going to come to party or not. So we need to look at that to say most of the guarantees that come for small businesses, you'd find that when you go to the bank, they would say, look, part of the money, we know that we're going to give it to you as a small business, but we have some guarantees. And part of the guarantees is that if you look at all the banks across South Africa, you'd find that the government funds are sitting with these banks. So what are the incentives for that? So we have to look at those incentives. And so what are the incentives for small businesses? And until we outline those incentives, you know, to say a mere thing, I mean, I've got a Capitec card as I'm sitting here, you know, but the only thing is that to know that if I'm going to use it for business, will it be different from others, except that I won't be charged for the banking fees, you know, which already, like I said, that if you look at FNB, immediately the news came out that Mercantile is coming on the game. What they did is they said, no, we're going to give a free account for small. And how many small businesses will go there? A lot of them
okay. So then let me ask you this. How do you define a small business? That's the first thing. And secondly, for me, I always look at it as more than just an issue of opening accounts, like we said earlier on.
Yes.
So if you're running a business and you already have cash flow, your cash flow should essentially be your collateral. If I go and I go, look, guys, we're turning over $1 million a month or whatever. I currently don't have any assets because all that turnover goes right back into the business. But you can see the money coming in. Just give me an option, because, you know, in terms of unsecured lending. And these guys are already doing that in the personal capacity. Why can't they do that in the business capacity?
Well, in the business, the risk is different, you know, because there you'd understand that they are looking at what's going to happen tomorrow to you. And they are looking at the states. What are the states saying about the small businesses? You know, the survival and all that. So sometimes the states are what maybe make them take the direction that they have to take. But at the same time, we should not, I'm not ruling them out to say, are they not going to be a better, competitor in the market? We are looking forward to them to say, how do we do that? But here is the thing, Caesar. I believe that for everybody that says we want to render service to a particular sector, allow that sector to have a say or input. Yes, they are in the business to make money, it's true. But we are all struggling to grow the economy. And if we are going to rely on the government input without having a quorum of maybe small business to say, listen, in as much as you're coming in, to play, we are looking forward to 1, 2, 3 as small business. We are looking forward to, if I have 1 million sitting in my account, should that be collateral enough, which is fair enough, as you said. But most of the banks, when you're sitting with that particular money, instead of saying, we are going to give you more opportunities, what they want is, can we take your money offshore? You can't have it sitting here doing nothing. And by the time you take it offshore, where is your collateral? Now, you are too risky to do business with.
And so then how do you balance between the two? Because we always speak about SMMEs getting access to funding. But then if we also agree that you can't just give everybody access to funding because that's risky, how do you mitigate the two? As a bank, you also don't want to lend out money recklessly and end up in a point where you can't recover any of it. You want your recovery rate to be 90% and above.
That's very true. There are two things that we have to look at. Access to funding, but also access to market. Because if I give you the funding, do you have access to the market? But if you can guarantee me that you've got off-take agreements, you've got a contract with you that says, here is a contract. If you give me this money, I'm going to make money, to generate money, and then within this period, I can pay back the money. And some of the companies are willing to go that far to say, listen.
But that's beyond the mandates of the bank now.
Well, it's beyond the mandate of the bank, but somehow I believe that we can all agree that we are in the space where there has to be some flexibility when it comes to how do we. Because whether we like it or not, if you checked on the stats today, I think it was Dr. Pali, he said that if we say we're going to create 400 and something thousand jobs, and whereas the stat says by 2031 million jobs, how are we going to reach that? It's not true. It's not going to happen. So the reality is everybody has to come to the party and say, how do we together partner? But at the same time, how do we become better players and be able to be flexible for small businesses than to see them exit? You look at the banks that are existing today and you ask yourself, how many accounts of small businesses have been closed? Not because they were not banking, but because suddenly you are sitting 400 gone. You go to the bank, 400 gone. And most of the small business accounts that were closed, you'd find that they never had a transaction which is over 10,000. Now that brings a question to small business to say, what is the purpose of me banking? If this is what's going to happen to me. If instead of you stay with the account for 3-4 months without money, that account can be automatically closed, whether you like it or not. So,
but if you can stay for 4 months without money, you're not running a business.
Well, most of them do have money, but they decide conscious to say, I don't want to put money there, because when I put the money, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what, maybe my money can, because to most of the small business, it's not that it's the bank charges. You know what they call it? Money disappeared. But the reality
where does the money go?
that's the thing. So the reality is that perception also can create that negativity in most of the people. So, but what Capitec Bank did was to make use of that, but also, like you said earlier, to say, because of their track record and because of how the community out there is accepting them, that becomes easier for them to enter. What I said earlier is that in as much as they enter now, they need to be cautious, because now business is not about profit anymore. It's also about how do you get involved in terms of growing, in terms of participating, in terms of bringing the partners on board so that you can be able to grow your business, but at the same time, have some social responsibility in the process.
But it sounds as though part of what we're asking of the banking sector is stuff that should exist almost not just policy, but in the environment. I mean, we hear the state speak a lot about, creating the entrepreneurial state, a state that is a facilitator, that allows businesses to flourish, right? But we also know there are all kinds of difficulties from, the length of time it takes to register a business. South Africa is has some of the longest periods in the world, the ease of doing business, the red tape, et cetera, et cetera. So it also sounds that
invoicing and payment.
Yeah, talking about 60, 19, some instances longer than that, So it sounds like what we're asking of the banking sector in many ways is making up for other things that should be happening, and also predominantly at a policy level, because part of the challenges of SMMEs, the environment, actually has nothing to do with where they put their money, but rather where they are running their businesses.
Where they are operating their businesses. Yeah, that's very true. And the reality is that we need to, Cesar asked me a question to say, how do we define these small businesses, We need to understand that most of the campaigns and the activities that we are having out there are not necessarily aimed at the bottom end. They are aimed at you kind of we call it small business, but you'll find that the beneficiaries are not there at the bottom. But are you kind of a big corporate and all that? But now the question is, when we create those opportunities for big corporates, how do they feed in small businesses? How do they create opportunities for small businesses that they come and play in the role? Because we cannot expect small businesses, for them to accumulate wealth or to grow, they have to reach out to the customers at the bottom. They can do that by reaching up to the big corporates. And there can be a balance there, because they can be able to create job opportunities.